Welcome back to the deep dive. If you were with us for our last session, we really went down a pretty intense rabbit hole.
It did.
We were looking at the structural pension crisis, and we sort of peeled back all these layers of global finance and realized that money, this thing we spend our whole lives chasing, it's really just a claim on reality. It's
Yep.
not reality itself.
Exactly. It's the map, not the territory.
Okay.
We kept coming back to that.
We did, and that whole conversation it really stuck with me. I mean, I've been looking at my bank account completely differently all week, but today we are taking that same framework, that cybernetic philosophy we introduced,
Right.
and we're zooming out, way, way out. We're not just looking at how we treat our elderly anymore. We're looking at how this entire operating system, this thing we call civilization, interacts with, well, with the planet it lives on.
And the other living things that share with us.
Exactly.
It really is the logical next step, isn't it? If the pension crisis is a glitch in how our system handles time and, generational handoffs, then what we're talking about today is a glitch in how it handles existence itself. We're diving into a report titled The Double Alienation.
The double alienation, it sounds ominous, almost like a sci-fi thriller where everyone forgets who they are or something.
It is serious,
Yeah.
but it's definitely not fiction. The core premise here is that modern society isn't just bad at protecting the environment because we're greedy.
Or because we're just morally failing.
Or morally failing, or, because humans are just naturally destructive. The argument in this text is much more clinical. It argues that we are suffering from a system error, a glitch.
A glitch in the simulation.
And glitch in the simulation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are running an economic operating system that, and this is the key part, literally cannot see the reality it depends on.
So wait, that's a provocative hook to start with. We aren't just evil, we're buggy.
In a manner of speaking, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We are trying to navigate a complex three-dimensional reality
Right.
using a one-dimensional map.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, we are constantly crashing into things we didn't even know were there.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because usually when we talk about the environment, it all gets turned into this massive guilt-ridden lump of problems,
Oh, absolutely.
Climate change, plastic straws, factory farming, extinction. It all just feels like one big humans are bad narrative. But this report, it separates it into two very specific, very different problems. It doesn't just lump them together.
Correct. And this distinction is absolutely crucial. People often throw environmentalism and animal rights into the same big bucket of being green.
Right. It's all the same to most people.
But cybernetically, from a systems engineering perspective, there are two fundamentally different kinds of errors. The report calls the destruction of nature ecological alienation.
Okay.
And this alienation acts like a form of blindness. We simply don't see the data.
Blindness. Okay, I'm with you.
But the industrial killing of animals, that's called creaturely alienation. And that is defined as coldness, or maybe even a repression.
Wait, okay, distinguish this for me. Blindness versus coldness. They sound similar, but you're saying they're not.
They're completely different mechanisms. Think of it this way. If you walk into a perfectly clean glass door because you didn't see it,
Right. Happens to the best of us.
that is blindness. It's a sensory failure. You just lack the data.
Yeah.
Your simulation of the room was wrong.
Okay.
But if you see a person standing in your way,
Yeah.
and you steel yourself, you stiffen your shoulder, and you deliberately shove them aside to get where you're going,
That's not an accident.
that is coldness. That is seeing the object, recognizing it as a person, and then actively suppressing your natural human reaction to, avoid them or say, excuse me.
So one is a mistake, an error in the code. The other is it's a feature we built on purpose, a firewall.
Precisely. And the end result of these two glitches running simultaneously is a society that is, on the one hand, devouring its own foundation, what we call the substrate, while at the same time it's destroying its own capacity for empathy.
Wow. Okay. Before we get into the grim details, and I have a feeling they're going to be pretty grim, let's just reground ourselves in the basics for a second.
Good idea.
For anyone who might have missed our pension deep dive, or for anyone who's just still trying to get their head around this whole cybernetic philosophy thing, remind us about the simulation versus the real.
All right. So the foundational concept is that we never, ever touch reality directly. We are what the philosophy calls observers.
We're stuck inside our own heads.
We are stuck inside our heads. We receive signals, light, sound, pressure, and our brain constructs a model of the world. That model, that's the simulation. It's our map of reality.
Okay.
The substrate, on the other hand, is the physical hardware. It's the biology, the silicon, the atoms, the actual stuff of the universe that is carrying us, the territory itself.
So the chair I'm sitting on right now is the substrate.
Yes.
My idea of the chair and my belief that it's going to hold me up, that's the simulation.
Exactly. Now, the problem always arises when our simulation, our internal map stops matching the substrate. When the map says safe road ahead, but the substrate actually contains a cliff, you fall.
Mm.
And in this context, the economy is our collective simulation. It's a massive shared map that we all use to coordinate our actions.
And it uses money as its main language.
It uses money as its primary data stream. And the whole thesis of the double alienation is that this simulation, our economic map, has lost contact with the substrate.
It's hallucinating.
It is processing data that just doesn't correspond to the physical world anymore. It's a system talking to itself.
Okay, I think I'm ready. Let's look at the first glitch. Ecological alienation. The blindness. My first question is, why can't our economy see a forest? I mean, that seems wrong. Lumber companies definitely see forests. Real estate developers see land. How are they blind?
That's the perfect question. They see the resource, but they don't see the system. And this comes down to a really technical-sounding problem that the report calls the interpolation error.
Interpolation error. I have to be honest, that sounds less like philosophy and more like I'm about to get a 404 error on my web browser. What are we actually talking about here?
It does sound technical, but it's actually a concept that explains why your grocery bill is lying to you every single day.
Okay, you have my attention.
To understand it, we have to look at the code of the economy itself. Money. In the source material, The Foundations of Cybernetic Philosophy, they make a very, very specific mathematical distinction. They define money as a digital scalar.
Okay, hold on. Scalar. I haven't heard that word since high school physics, and I'm pretty sure I didn't understand it then. Refresh my memory.
It's simpler than it sounds. A scalar is just a fancy way of saying a quantity that has magnitude, but no direction. It's a one-dimensional value.
Like temperature.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
A thermometer says 72 degrees. It's just a number on a line. It's higher or lower. That's it. It has no other dimension to it. Prices are scalars. $50, $100, $1,000. It measures exactly one thing.
Exchange value.
Exchange value, that's all. It's a single dot on a line.
Okay, I follow. A price tag is one data point.
Exactly. Now, I want you to look out the window. Or just picture it. Picture a forest. Or even just a single old tree. Is a tree a scalar? Is a tree just a single number?
No, definitely not. I mean, looking at a tree, it's the way the light hits the leaves, it's the roots going deep into the soil, it's the birds nesting in its branches, the carbon it's sucking out of the air.
The shade it provides, the way it holds the soil together when it rains.
It's a living system, a whole world.
Right. It is a massive, tangled web of relationships.
Yeah.
In mathematics, we wouldn't call a tree a scalar. We would call it a high-dimensional vector. It has millions of variables: humidity, soil bacteria, structural integrity, shade provision, wind resistance. It is an analog reality with, for all intents and purposes, infinite resolution.
Okay, so on one side, we have the forest, a high-dimensional vector with a billion variables, and on the other side, we have the economy, a system that only speaks in scalars, in single numbers.
And that is where the crash happens. That is the interpolation error. Because when the economy wants to interact with that forest, it has to translate the forest into its own language. It has to take that billion-dimensional reality.
Latin.
It has to compress it down to a single number.
It's like trying to describe a Van Gogh painting using only the number 4.
That is a perfect analogy. It's an act of catastrophic simplification. The system looks at this complex, breathing, life-supporting forest, and it asks its one and only question: what is the price?
And the simulation spits out an answer?
It spits out an answer.
Yeah.
Lumber value, $400 per ton, or land value for development, $2 million.
And in that translation, what happens to all the rest of the data? The bird nests, the oxygen production, the soil health, the water filtration.
Deleted.
Just gone.
They're not just undervalued. They were literally erased from the data stream. They don't exist in the map. This is why we call it ecological blindness. It's not that the logger is an evil person who hates birds.
It's that the software he's using.
The economic software he is using literally cannot render the bird. It cannot process the variable water table stability. It can only render the lumber.
That is actually much scarier than just saying greed. Greed implies a choice. There's a moral dimension. You're saying the system is technically incapable of even seeing what it's destroying?
Precisely. It's a low-resolution map trying to navigate a high-resolution world. And when you navigate a complex territory with a bad map, you don't just get lost. You crash. The water storage capacity of that forest. In the economic simulation, the system sets that value to 0.
The cooling effect on the local climate.
Value 0. The biodiversity that might hold the cure for a future disease. Value 0. The aesthetic beauty that brings peace to people. Value 0.
So when a logging company cuts down that forest, they aren't thinking, I am destroying a complex life support system. They're thinking,
I am harvesting $400 worth of lumber per ton. And they are, according to the simulation they're operating in, acting rationally. They're optimizing the only variables they can see. This is why the report calls this systemic narcissism.
narcissism, that feels like a personality flaw, not a computer bug. Usually when we call someone a narcissist, we mean they're obsessed with themselves, they lack empathy.
And that's exactly what it means in cybernetics, too. A narcissistic system is one that is obsessed with its own internal parameters while completely ignoring external reality.
So the economy is just staring at its own reflection.
It's optimizing for GDP, for returns, for growth.
Yeah.
These are internal scores in the game. It's like playing a video game and trying to get the high score while completely ignoring the fact that your house is burning down around you.
Because the fire isn't on the screen.
Exactly. The fire is in the substrate. The score is in the simulation. So we are destroying nature, not because we hate trees, but because our dashboard doesn't have a planetary collapse warning light. It only has a profit light. And it's blinking green.
That is profoundly disturbing. It really does make it sound like we're sleepwalking off a cliff.
Substrate amnesia is the term used in the text. We've forgotten that we are physical beings standing on a physical planet. We think we live in the economy. But we don't. We live in the biosphere. The economy is just a layer of software running on top of it.
And if you crash the hardware.
The software stops running, no matter how high your score is.
So that's the blindness. The system is too simple, it's too scalar to understand the vector complexity of the world it's eating. It's a data compression error that ends up killing the planet.
That's a very good way to put it.
Now, let's pivot to the second alienation, the animals. The creaturely alienation. You said this isn't blindness, it's coldness.
That's right.
I guess my first question is, why the distinction? Why isn't a cow just another resource like a tree? Why does the system need a whole different kind of error to process it?
The difference lies in the nature of the object itself. A tree, biologically speaking, is silent. It doesn't scream. It doesn't have a central nervous system. It is incredibly complex, but it is passive. An animal, however.
An animal looks back.
An animal looks back. An animal is what the cybernetic philosophy calls an observer of the third order.
Okay, we need to break down these orders of observers. I'm assuming I'm a fourth order observer. Or am I giving myself too much credit here?
No, you are correct. Let's just quickly simplify the hierarchy from the source material.
Please.
An observer of the first order is just basic physical interaction. An atom hitting an atom. It reacts, but it doesn't process information. A rock falling.
Okay.
Second order is something like a storm system or a simple cell. It maintains a structure, it seeks energy, but it doesn't really know anything. There's no inner world.
No self.
Exactly. Third order is the animal. It has self-awareness, it feels pain, it feels fear, it has a memory, it wants to live. Crucially, it has an inside perspective. It is a subject.
Okay, a self, and then there's us.
And then there's us, humans, as fourth order. We have recursive self-awareness. We don't just know things. We know that we know things. We can tell stories about ourselves. We can conceptualize the past and the future.
So we can think about our own thinking.
Right. But here is the key. Because we are fourth order, when we look at a third order being a pig, a cow, a dog, a chimpanzee, we instinctively recognize it.
We see the lights are on. We see someone's home.
We see a subject, not an object. We see something that is self-similar. And this recognition triggers a powerful physical mechanism in our brains called resonance.
Resonance, like a guitar string vibrating when another one is plucked.
That's the perfect metaphor. When we see a suffering creature, our mirror neurons fire. We feel a shadow of their pain. This creates physical information in our own body. We call it compassion or pity, and that feeling is a biological instruction.
Help or do not kill.
Exactly. It's a stop signal. Now, the economic system in its blindness can just ignore the tree, but it cannot simply ignore the pig's scream. The scream is data. It's a powerful signal that our biology is hardwired to process.
I want to push back on this for a second, though, because humans have been killing animals for a very long time. Our ancestors hunted mammoths. We've raised livestock for thousands of years. Are you saying our ancestors were glitching? Or is this resonance thing just a modern sensitivity we've developed?
That is a vital question. And you're right, killing is part of our biological history. We are heterotrophs, we eat other life,
Hmm.
but there is a massive fundamental difference between the hunter and the industrialist.
What's the difference? Dead is dead, isn't it?
The difference is the suppression of information. When a traditional hunter kills a deer or a traditional farmer slaughters a pig for the winter, the resonance is actually there. It's part of the process.
They feel the weight of it.
They feel the weight of the life they are taking. There is often a ritual, a prayer, a moment of gratitude, or at least a somatic physical recognition that a subject has died so that I can live.
Okay, so they're paying the emotional cost. They pay the quality tax, so to speak.
Exactly, they process the signal. But industrial creaturely alienation is different. It isn't about managing the reality of death. It's about denying that there was ever a life to begin with. The system we have now, factory farming, requires us to interact with the animal as if it were a vegetable, as if it were an object.
Ah, I see. The hunter sees a who and turns it into a meal. The factory farm insists it was always just a what.
Correct. To process animals by the billions, day in and day out, we cannot afford to feel the resonance. It's not economically efficient. If every consumer truly felt the fear of the cow every time they bought a burger, the entire industry would collapse in a week.
Because the signal of all that suffering would be too strong. Our mirror neurons would just scream, stop!
They would overload the system. So the system has to build a firewall. It has to block the signal before it reaches us.
And that act of blocking, that energy spent on not feeling, that's what the report calls the coldness. It's an active suppression mechanism.
Exactly. Unlike with the forest, where data is passively lost, here the data is actively and deliberately repressed.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts of this firewall. The report calls them psychotechnical operators, which, again, sounds like something out of Blade Runner or a sci-fi movie. But you're saying we encounter these every time we walk into a supermarket.
Every single time. These are the tools society uses to resolve the dissonance. We have a fundamental conflict in our heads. I am a biological being with mirror neurons who hates to see suffering versus I want to buy cheap meat.
How do we solve it?
Operator number one, semantic isolation.
The language game.
It's incredibly powerful. Notice how the English language specifically shifts when we move from the barn to the table. In the field, it's a living cow. On the plate, it's beef. In the field, it's a pig. On the plate, it's pork.
You know, I never really thought about why we do that. We don't do it for plants. A carrot is a carrot, cooked or raw. We don't have a special word for dead carrot.
Right. We don't need a linguistic buffer for a carrot because we don't feel empathy for it. There's no resonance to suppress. But for sentient beings, we need to sever the link between the living face and the consumable object. In the industry, it's even more extreme. They don't talk about killing animals. They talk about processing units, harvesting stock, depopulation.
It turns a who into a what. It's like an ontological rebranding. You're changing the file name on the being so the computer, our brain, doesn't recognize the source.
Ontological degradation is exactly the term the source uses. You are systemically downgrading the reality status of the being.
Yeah.
But language is just the soft layer. The hard layer of the firewall is operator number two. Encapsulation.
This is the physical hiding, right? Putting it all behind closed doors.
Yes. And I want you to really visualize this for a moment. We process billions upon billions of land animals every year. It is a massive industrial operation involving blood, machinery, noise, waste, and screaming. And yet, where is it?
It's invisible. It's in these huge windowless sheds miles away from any city. I've driven past them on the highway. You can smell them long before you see them, but you never actually see inside.
Now compare that to a construction site. You see skyscrapers being built every day. You see roads being paved. The creation of our inanimate world is visible. But the production of meat, it is arguably the most secretive hidden industry on Earth.
And that's not an accident.
It is a cybernetic necessity. If you, the consumer, had to walk through a modern slaughterhouse on your way to the meat aisle, your senses would be flooded with what we call qualia raw, visceral subjective experience. The smell alone would trigger a massive rejection response in your brain.
Qualia being the internal feeling, the gut punch, the horror.
Yes, qualia is the energetic cost of processing information. The horror you feel is a very high energy state. It's a powerful stop signal. It prevents you from buying the product. So the system brilliantly builds the slaughterhouse far away, it puts up windowless walls, and then it wraps the final product in sterile plastic and styrofoam.
So the plastic wrap, the styrofoam tray, the clean, sterile lighting in the grocery store, That's not just packaging, that's a sensory deprivation tank.
It is designed to strip all the data of its origin. It presents you with a clean, silent, odorless geometric shape, the cube of pink protein. The history of the animal has been methodically scrubbed off so that your mirror neurons have nothing to latch onto.
It's the out of sight, out of mind principle, but weaponized on an industrial scale.
And the third operator reinforces this perfectly: statistical de-individualization.
Turning them into numbers.
Exactly. Think about a pet dog. It has a name, Fido.
Yeah.
It has a personality. It is an individual. We would be horrified if someone harmed Fido.
Of course.
Now think of a factory farm with 50,000 chickens crammed into a single shed.
They're just a mass, a statistic. Chicken as a substance, not as a being.
Large numbers erase empathy. Our brains are not wired to resonate with a statistic. We resonate with individuals and stories. By turning animals into livestock, and just think about that word, living stock, a pile of inventory, we strip them of the very individuality that would otherwise trigger our compassion.
So we have a system that renames them, hides them away from our senses, and then turns them into abstract numbers. And this three-layer firewall allows us to bypass our own mirror neurons.
It creates what the report calls systemic psychopathy.
Whoa. Okay. Psychopathy, that's a clinical diagnosis, that feels. That's a heavy word. Are we calling everyone who eats a burger a psychopath?
No, and this is a crucial distinction. We are not talking about individual psychopathy. We are talking about a systemic structure, a societal logic.
Okay.
Think about the clinical definition of a psychopath. It isn't necessarily someone who enjoys causing pain. It is someone who knows pain exists in others, but blocks the emotional response to it. They split their perception from their emotion.
They see the data, but they don't feel the qualia.
Precisely. And our society trains us to do exactly this in this one specific domain. We know intellectually that the factory farm is a place of horror. We've seen the documentaries. But we block the emotional reaction technically.
Yeah.
We split off a part of our own perception in order to function within the system.
So we are functioning within a psychopathic logic, even if we ourselves are normal feeling people. We outsource the coldness to the system itself.
Exactly. The report argues that this is, by definition, a psychopathological structure. We are training ourselves as a culture to be selectively emotionally blind. We learn how to turn the dimmer switch on our empathy all the way down whenever it's convenient.
That leads perfectly into the next segment, because the obvious question from someone listening is, so what?
Right. Why is this my problem?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm just a consumer trying to buy dinner for my family and this whole elaborate system gives me affordable food, does it really matter if I'm blocking my resonance? I'm saving money, I'm seeding my kids. Why is this bad for me? But the report says it is bad for me. It says this creates a boomerang effect. The coldness we project outward comes back and hits us.
This is the critical insight of the entire analysis. Alienation is not a one-way street. You cannot treat the world like a machine without eventually turning yourself into a machine. The report identifies two major ways this hits back at us: a loss of autonomy and a loss of integrity.
Okay, let's start with autonomy. This links back to that autarky illusion you mentioned in the text.
Right. Autarky just means self-sufficiency. Modern society suffers from the powerful delusion that we are independent of nature. We sit in air-conditioned offices, we drive climate-controlled cars, we buy food from fluorescent-lit stores. We feel like we have conquered the substrate,
That we've risen above it.
that we're post-nature. But this is a complete and total illusion.
Because we're still biological beings. We still need oxygen, clean water, a stable temperature range. We can't actually upload ourselves to the cloud yet.
Not yet. And the more we destroy the natural systems that provide these services, for free forests that cool the air, wetlands that filter water, bees that pollinate crops, the more we have to build complex, expensive artificial machines to replace them.
Right.
Think about it. We cut down all the trees in a city. The city gets hotter, the urban heat island effect. So what do?
We buy air conditioners. Millions of them.
We buy millions of air conditioners. Those air conditioners need a huge amount of energy. So we burn more coal or gas to power them, which creates more carbon dioxide, which makes the entire planet hotter, which means we need bigger, more powerful air conditioners.
It's a vicious cycle. We become slaves to our own technology just to survive.
That is the loss of autonomy. We're spending more and more of our energy, our resources, our ingenuity just to stabilize an environment that used to stabilize itself for free. We are trapped in a feedback loop of our own making. We think we are masters of technology, but we are becoming its servants, just trying to survive the mess we made.
And the loss of integrity. That sounds more psychological.
This brings us back to the coldness, doesn't it?
It does. This is the other side of the boomerang. The argument is that you cannot compartmentalize empathy perfectly. You can't just build a little box in your brain that says, I will be completely cold and efficient toward this pig, and then turn around and be completely warm and empathetic toward this human.
The brain doesn't work like that.
The brain learns algorithms. If you train your brain day after day to ignore the suffering of a sentient being, a pig that is screaming and terrified, you are training a specific neural algorithm. And that algorithm is efficiency over empathy, productivity over personhood. You are practicing how not to feel.
And once you install that software, that algorithm, it doesn't just run on animals.
No, it bleeds over. It becomes a general purpose tool. And this is where we connect right back to the pension crisis we discussed last time.
Remember how we talked about the economization of the elderly? How the system starts to view an old person not as a grandparent or a repository of wisdom, but as a cost factor, a liability on a balance sheet.
Yeah. Demographic burden, longevity risk. The language was incredibly cold.
That is the exact same logic we applied to the pig.
Yeah.
It is the logic of the slaughterhouse applied to the nursing home. Once you accept the core premise that a living being is only valuable as long as it is productive and becomes waste or a burden when it is not, you are on a very, very dangerous path.
So if you train yourself to dim your empathy for the cow to get cheap food, you risk becoming socially cold in general.
You start looking at the poor, the sick, the refugees, or the elderly, and your first reflexive thought isn't resonance. It isn't how can I help? It is cost. It is efficiency. The coldness creates a society that is incredibly efficient, but sterile.
A society that functions but doesn't feel.
And a human who cannot feel is, by definition, damaged. That is the loss of integrity. We hollow ourselves out.
This is really bleak. But it makes so much sense. We aren't just hurting nature out there. We are fundamentally rewiring humanity in here. So we're stuck in a pathological loop. We destroy the outside via our systemic blindness, and we damage the inside via our systemic repression. How do we fix the code? The report has a section on the cybernetic correction, and I hope it's more than just go vegan and recycle.
It is.
Because those feel like individual Band-Aids on a gaping chest wound at this point.
You are right. The solution isn't just we should all be nicer people. That's not a systemic solution. That's just a moral plea, and it doesn't work at scale. Cybernetics demands a change in the structure of the information processing itself. We need to patch the operating system. We need to fix the simulation so it actually matches the substrate again.
Okay, patch number 1. Ecological internalization. Fixing the map.
Right now, as we said, the map, which is price, does not show the damage to the territory, which is nature. To fix this, we need to internalize those external costs. The price of a product must reflect the total damage to the substrate.
Let's go back to that hamburger.
Okay, cheap burger. Maybe it costs you $1.99.
Right.
Why is it $1.99? Because the massive amount of water used to grow the grain for the cow was free or heavily subsidized. The carbon dioxide emitted by the transport was free to dump in the atmosphere. The soil degradation from the monoculture crops was free. The methane from the cow was free.
The cost is externalized.
Exactly. If that burger costs $1 to make, but it destroys $50 worth of clean water, stable soil, and climate stability, then the price on the menu cannot be $1.
Because that $1 price is a lie. It's false data. It's telling the consumer this is cheap, when in reality it's telling them this is incredibly expensive, but we are sending the bill to your grandchildren.
It is a hallucination. It is an error signal driving the whole system off a cliff. If the price on the menu was $51, the true price, the market would naturally regulate the consumption. We wouldn't need to guilt people into not eating it. They just wouldn't buy it because it's ridiculously inefficient.
It would be a luxury item.
It would be priced, honestly. Currently, destroying the planet is profitable because the cost of destruction is set to 0. We need to implement feedback loops where the damage creates an immediate and visible cost in the simulation.
So things like carbon taxes, water pricing, biodiversity credits, these aren't just political annoyances. They are attempts to make the map true again, to fix the bug.
They are attempts to update the data structure so the simulation stops crashing the car. It is fundamentally about making the economy tell the truth.
Okay, so that handles the blindness. What about the coldness? Patch number 2. Creaturely visibility, restoring transparency.
This one tackles the repression. Remember, the entire mechanism of repression relies on encapsulation, on hiding the process.
The windowless sheds and the plastic wrap.
Exactly. So to fix it, we must tear down the walls. The process from living being to product must be made visible.
You mean glass walls on slaughterhouses?
Metaphorically and perhaps literally, yes. The information must be allowed to flow. If you want to eat meat, the cybernetic philosophy says, that's your choice. But you must pay the full energetic cost of that decision. And that cost includes the qualia, the emotional, psychological impact of knowing how it arrived on your plate.
Well, you have to own the kill.
In a sense, yes. This links to a concept from the philosophy source, which talks about the honest perpetrator. If you cause harm, and living by definition involves causing some harm, we consume life to live, you must do so with open eyes. You must integrate the reality of the act into your own self-model. Hiding the act is cowardly. It creates a disconnect, a sickness in the self.
And if the encapsulation falls?
If the encapsulation falls, resonance can work again. If people actually saw the unvarnished reality of industrial farming, the resonance, the horror, and the pity would act as a powerful natural brake on the system.
We wouldn't need as many laws to ban certain practices. Our own stomachs would turn against them.
Exactly. Ethics isn't about following a rule book. In cybernetics, ethics is about signal fidelity. It's about letting the reality of the world penetrate your simulation without distortion. If you see the suffering and still choose to eat it, okay, that is an informed choice. But currently, we aren't making a choice. We are being fed a lie. We are buying a sanitized package, not an animal. Restoring visibility forces us to be human again. It forces us to feel.
It really sounds like the ultimate goal here isn't just environmental protection in the traditional sense. It's something bigger. It's about code correction. It's about systemic sanity.
It is. As long as our economic system is blind to the substrate and deaf to suffering, the human remains a foreign body on its own planet. We're acting like a virus consuming and destroying the host, when we should be acting like a neuron integrating with and supporting the network of life.
That brings us to the end of the report, and honestly, my head is spinning a bit. This has been a lot.
It's a deep framework. It changes how you see things.
It really does. We've gone from a mathematical error in how we price a forest all the way to the psychological wall we build against a pig's gaze. And the scary part is, these aren't just things happening out there in the abstract economy. They're happening in here, in how we perceive the world every single day.
And that is the challenge of a deep dive like this.
Yeah.
It forces you to look at your own operating system. Are you seeing the world?
Yeah.
Or are you just seeing the price tags and the packaging?
The report ends with that really haunting idea that we have become foreign bodies on our own world. So here is the provocative thought for you, the listener, to carry into your week. The next time you sit down to a meal or pick up a product in the store, just stop for a second. Look at it. Really look at it. Are you seeing the product, the shiny, finished, simple object that fits neatly into the economic simulation?
The scalar.
Or are you willing to try and see the process? The sunlight, the water, the soil, the animal, the life and the death that actually made that object possible, the vector. Are you looking at the map or are you looking at the territory?
Because the map might be comfortable, but only the territory is real.
Until next time, keep checking your map against the territory. This has been The Deep Dive.